Good evening, and welcome to the latest happenings inside our federal machine.
It's Tuesday, February 3rd, 2026. It's Spathon with tonight's episode of The Swamp. The partial government shutdown has officially ended. President Trump signed the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026, which will secure all government funding until September. However, one major part was missing from the bill, the SAVE Act. And during the signing event, President Trump called on the Senate to pass the SAVE Act immediately. And we have an updated percentage of Americans who prefer voter ID, and we'll get to hear that from none other than CNN. Also, DNI Tulsi Gabbard gives her response to the recent scandal of accusations that Democrats have thrown at her, and she wrote a formal letter to Congress to address the situation, and we'll have a look at that. Also, Bill and Hillary Clinton agreed to testify before Congress later this month, and we'll have a look at the latest update as well as new discoveries within the Epstein files. And Democrat Rep. Jerry Nadler said during a committee that if a U.S. citizen is being detained by masked federal agents, a citizen has a right to shoot them. How's that for violent rhetoric? We'll take a look at that too. And a federal judge appointed by Joe Biden has blocked the DHS from ending the temporary protected status of Haitians who arrived to the U.S. 15 years ago following the earthquake. And federal agents discovered an illegal biolab in Las Vegas, Nevada, which contains dangerous pathogens including Ebola, malaria, a COVID variant, and tuberculosis. The individual arrested was a Chinese national, of course, and there's a lot more that happened today, so we're going to dive straight in. And if you enjoyed the video, please give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the daily updates. And I might read your comment on tomorrow's episode if you decide to leave one below. And every article you'll see in the video will be linked in the description. And we're going to start here from the White House. A great victory for the American people. President Donald J. Trump signs the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026 into law, which reopens the government and fund the vast majority of operations and America First policies. Let's have a look.
I'm thrilled to sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and fund the vast majority of operations through the rest of the fiscal year. This bill is a great victory for the American people. Instead of a bloated and wasteful omnibus monstrosity full of special interest handouts, we've succeeded in passing a fiscally responsible package that actually cuts wasteful federal spending while supporting critical programs for the safety, security, and prosperity of the American people.
Yeah, the red hats are back in full force. America is back. That's what it says on the hats. And rolling on to Rapid Response 47, this bill officially ends all taxpayer subsidies for radical woke programming on both NPR and PBS. Also, it slashes $10 billion worth of wasteful foreign aid spending, and it continues the closure of the wasteful USAID program, including instead creating a new America First Opportunity Fund. It also cuts funding to abusive, weaponized IRS programs. That's nice. Builds on the Republican rescissions package passed last summer. Fully funds our military, including a well-deserved pay raise for all American service members. It also makes historic investments in American shipbuilding, continues funding deportation flights, and also continues the historically successful efforts to reduce crime in our nation's capital. That's a lot of extra stuff that they threw into that bill. It's quite a shame that they didn't have time to squeeze in the SAVES Act. I find that to be insanely ridiculous. But nevertheless, we'll take a look at this.
The bill officially ends all taxpayer subsidies for radical far-left woke programming on NPR and PBS, just a waste of money. It slashes nearly $10 billion in wasteful foreign aid spending, giving money to countries that don't need it. They have plenty of money. And we ended that. That was so important, $10 billion. Think of it. It continues the closure of USAID and creates a brand new America First Opportunity Fund for responsibly providing foreign assistance to nations where it actually serves American interests. So we have nations that do help us, and it serves our interests, so we have something to help them out with. This bill also cuts funding to abusive and weaponized IRS programs. I was a victim of that too. You probably read that. Did you read
I'm sure
that
he was.
recently, right?
For sure.
I mean, he was only audited, what, 1,000 times?
That were used to harass American taxpayers. It builds on the Republican rescissions package passed last summer, which saved Americans billions and billions of dollars. It fully funds our military, includes a well-deserved pay raise for all American service members, and makes historic investments in the American shipbuilding industry, which is great. We're really starting to do something incredible with shipbuilding. And I don't know if you saw that the United States of America, for the first time in over 30 years, beat Japan. We love Japan.
Steel manufacturing.
Country, but their power in steel making, that we produce more steel this year than Japan. Think of that. More steel than Japan, and Japan is a powerhouse at that.
Yeah, but it's kind of a catch-22, to be honest, because Nippon Steel, which is a Japanese company, bought U.S. Steel late last year, or at some point last year, was when the purchase went through. It was approved by the government. So Japan basically owns U.S. Steel now. So, I mean, if it's produced in the U.S., yeah, that's wonderful because it equals jobs. It equals more jobs. However, the money, the bulk of the profits, sounds like it's going to Japan, though.
And we were pretty much dead when it came to steel. So what do you think of that?
I can't believe we sold it.
To me, when I
It's
heard
insane.
that, we did more than Japan. It continues to fund deportation flights that are removing dangerous illegal aliens from our country. It continues historically successful efforts to reduce crime in our nation's capital.
Yep, it does a whole lot of things, does plenty, except it doesn't require, or at least not in the Consolidated Appropriations Act, it doesn't have a provision that requires people to have voter ID when they go and vote. All right, so the next one, I'm thrilled to sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and fund the vast majority of operations through the rest of the fiscal year. It's only 12 seconds. It might be a repeat of the first one we watched, but maybe it's not. We'll see.
To sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and fund the vast majority of operations through the rest of the fiscal year.
It's a hell of a box, man. Is that the bill? In its, 1,000 plus page entirety? Okay, so we'll head on to the next thing from Nick Sordor. Holy crap, President Trump just decimated Caitlin Collins for continuously badgering him in the Oval Office. All Collins does is interrupt. She should be barred from the Oval. And then there's a quote from President Trump, so we'll hear him say it. And this should get interesting.
Something that people care about. Yeah, what did you say? Go ahead.
What would you say to the survivors who feel
You are the worst reporter. No wonder CNN has no ratings because of people like you. You know, she's a young woman. I don't think I've ever seen you smile. I've known you for 10 years. I don't think I've ever seen a smile on your face. You know why?
Well, no, I know why. Because she's a progressive leftist. They're incapable of smiling. In years and years, they've not had one single good day. Not one good day. They're constantly angry about everything, no matter what it is.
You know why you're not smiling? Because you know you're not telling the truth.
Right.
And you're a very dishonest organization, and they should be ashamed of you. Okay, go ahead.
You mentioned health care, and the bill that was just passed does not include your health care savings account. So this is a question for you, and maybe for Mr. Speaker as well.
I'm so proud of the health care savings accounts because it's going to happen.
Okay, well, you just moved on from there. Well, they really put her in her place. Okay, so this is President Trump participating in the bill, signing the entirety. Usually I'll show this just to give a chance to repost this. There's a direct link to my profile in the description below. You don't have to be signed into X or anything like that to view it. You can just click on the link. It'll take you straight there. If you, by any chance, if you want to watch the entire thing, it's right here. So maybe we'll just give it like 30 seconds, maybe a minute, then we'll move on.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very important day. We have a lot of important days, but I'm thrilled to sign the Consolidated Appropriations Act to immediately reopen the federal government and...
Okay, all right. Well, we already heard that, so I'll just go ahead and move on, but just making a point that it's also at the White House if you want to go check it out there. Looks like it's, about a little over a half an hour in length. And up next from Gunther Eagleman, Just In, Rep. John Rose, Republican of Tennessee, drops a hard no on advancing the government funding bill after Senate Leader Thune backtracked on his promise to bring the SAVE Act to the floor. Rose isn't playing. Quote, House Republicans must hold the line and refuse to fold on something as fundamental as election integrity. The SAVE Act belongs on must-pass legislation. Why aren't they passing this? This would help secure their seat in the next election. Is it because John Thune, he's just not up for re-election and he just doesn't give a shit? I would assume that they would like to, I don't know, maybe hold the majority in the Senate, maybe even pick up a couple of seats. That would sure make it a little more realistic if we ensured that everybody has voter ID, that it's a requirement when we go and vote. It would therefore make it a lot more difficult for illegals to vote or fraudulent people to vote, people who are double voting, triple voting. It should eliminate all of that too, since you have to present ID and you have to sign off on that ballot. That way they don't issue more than one. At least that's as far as my understanding goes of it. He's one of just 2 GOP no votes so far. Vote held open as leadership scrambles to flip him with better assurances from Johnson and Thune. The SAVE Act, proof of citizenship to vote, has sat in the GOP Senate for 300 plus days. No more empty words. 83% of Americans want this, even 71% of Democrats. Let's have a look at this. So we got the yays, the nays, 212 yes, 2 no. This is an agreement on the resolution, which Trump just signed a few hours ago. Okay, so there was no sound, so that was basically pointless. But anyway, those are the results that we've got. 212, 216 for the nays. And then, again, this is in the House. So, yeah, agreement on the resolution. And I guess we'll just head on to the next thing. And what do we got next? From Nick Sordor, breaking President Trump from the Oval Office just called for the SAVE Act to be passed now. Who would not want voter ID? Only those who want to cheat. The Democrats don't want it because they want to cheat. We're running out of time. And they tagged leader John Thune from the Senate. We can end most Democrat cheating here and now.
We should have voter ID, by the way. We should have a lot of the things that I think everybody wants to see. Who would not want voter ID? Only somebody that wants to cheat. Think of it.
Why it's not already federal law is beyond me.
And the Democrats don't want it. And the reason they don't want it is because they want to cheat. Because there's no reason in the world, and I love that debate, Lindsay. I love saying, well, why don't you want voter ID? And you watch them say, I don't know, I just
make them vote.
I know, it's a terrible thing. So anyway.
Exactly. Because they want to double vote, triple vote, quadruple vote. They want illegals to vote. Probably even people under 18. They probably even try to get them to vote in some cases. Just blanketing the state with mail-in ballots. That way they don't have to show proof of ID and all that nonsense. It's freaking ridiculous. Okay, so we've got press secretary on President Trump's support for the SAVE Act. The president believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections, and voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue.
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law during his term. And he spoke with the speaker directly about that yesterday, about the need to get that bill on the floor for a vote, because it provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID. I don't think any rational person who's being honest with themselves would disagree with the idea of requiring citizens of this country to present an ID before casting a ballot in a federal election, or frankly in any election. And that's something the president wants to see happen. So that's what he was referring to.
But to be clear, he does believe the state should oversee elections.
The president believes in the United States Constitution. However, he believes there has obviously been a lot of fraud and irregularities that have taken place in American elections. And again, voter ID is a highly popular and common sense policy that the president wants to pursue, and he wants to pass legislation to make that happen for all states across the country.
Okay, so I don't know, man. I can't for the life of me understand why he wouldn't put that bill to the floor for a vote. I mean, they probably don't have 60 votes. Maybe that's the reason. I mean, and if they don't, why not just come out and say that? But it does sound like the Republicans are working on a workaround or a way around that possibility that they just may simply not have 60 votes. And I'm sure they won't. I mean, Democrats are at the point now, where they're just basically asking themselves and asking each other, do Republicans, are they in favor of that? Okay, yeah, we're a hard no. And no matter what it is, they just want to take an opposite stance, no matter what it might be. So we got another one from Gunther Eagleman. Breaking Leader Thune appears to be backing off commitments to do a standing filibuster, saying we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster, it has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of. Anyway, we'll hear all this from him on Fox News.
Filibuster, try to outlast the Democratic minority under current rules. Do you have any expectation that you can succeed with that, given the enormous difficulty of doing that? In fact, the previous majority has not been able to.
Right. Well, I guess, and I would just remind people that the coin in the realm in the Senate is floor time. There's a finite amount of it, and we have a lot of things we have to do. There's a housing.
Oh, bullshit. Bullshit. The SAVE Act should be item number 1 at the top of that list. Does he not realize that we're in a midterm
bill
season?
That's awaiting action, hopefully a market structure bill, possibly permitting reform, farm bill, highway bill. You can go right down the list. Russia
yeah, because those are all so more important than the SAVE Act.
Up for action on the floor of the Senate. And so you have to make some judgments, and the conference will have a conversation about that. I've committed to that we will talk about that idea and determine whether or not what the conference's views are about it and how they want to proceed. As I said, we will vote on the SAVE Act, but exercising or triggering a talking filibuster has ramifications, implications that I think everybody needs to be aware of.
So what if it gets passed?
We will have those
whatever it takes.
But that's obviously ties the floor up for an indefinite amount of time with not only unlimited debate, but also unlimited amendments.
All right, rather we had the Senate Majority Leader and the Speaker of the House speaking.
Okay, well, I'm not too knowledgeable with regard to the amendments. If they end up passing it, I can only imagine Democrats trying to put up tons of roadblocks or giving exceptions for this, that, and the other. So maybe that could be part of the problem. Not so sure. But if he's worried about unlimited debate time or unlimited floor time, wouldn't now be a better time than any time? The earlier, the better. That way they could get all the debates done. Everybody gets tuckered out. Everybody gets tired. They can't hold their pee any longer. They're pissing their pants because they've been filibustering for the last 18 hours on the SAVE Act. Honestly, to me, it just sounds like he has no intention on even getting this thing to the floor. But again, time will tell. And we've got this from Scott Pressler. Senator Rick Scott says Senator Thune is committed to finding a way to pass the SAVE Act. I'm not so sure about that, but like its sponsor, Senator Mike Lee, Senator Scott has been instrumental in whipping votes for the SAVE Act. Don't stop until it's on President Trump's desk. Let's hope so.
Everybody that's fighting to pass the Save America Act to make sure we secure our elections. I want to thank Leader Thune because I know he's committed to figuring out how do we get this passed. We have to pass the Save America Act to save our elections.
All right. Well, I guess I'll just have to take him at his word for now, at least in the meantime. From Timu Obama, Hakeem Jeffries, instead of manufacturing a voting crisis that doesn't exist, solve the affordability crisis crushing the American people. Thank you for your attention to this matter. It's all lies. All right, so moving on to Trump War Room. CNN, the American people are with Nicki Minaj. They favor voter photo ID to vote. Check this out, man, CNN.
And the American people are with Nicki Minaj, because what are we talking about here? So take a look here. Favor voter ID to vote. Look, I got all this polling on the screen going back since 2018.
Well.
You'll notice on all of it, it's all north of 75%, 76%, 76%, 76%, 81%, and then 83%
it's only going up, Democrats.
Of Americans agree with Nicki Minaj. They favor photo ID to be able to vote.
Yeah, damn straight we do. And why wouldn't we? And the argument that Democrats have is that, well, minorities, they don't know where the license branch, the DMV, they don't know where that's at, so they can't go get an ID because they're just not familiar with how to get one done. Suggesting that minorities just don't have driver's licenses, which is racist as all hell. But that's an argument that Democrats have made, and saying that it undermines poor people, and dude, it's the law. You have to have an ID of some form or another if you're an adult. If nothing else, you can get a voter ID card, which costs nothing. At least in the state I live in, they send it to you. They at least send mine in the mail every 3 years or 5 years or something like that. I get an actual voter registration card that has my name and my precinct and all my basic information on it. And I can just take that there and present that. At least as far as I know, I believe they accept that as a form of ID in my state. It doesn't have my signature on it, so maybe things have changed or times have changed. I'm not sure. I know the first thing that they ask for is your driver's license. I'm sure that's what they that they prefer, which voter ID might actually be a requirement in the state of Florida regardless. But anyway, so this is from Rep. Anna Paulina Luna. Chuck Schumer and many Democrats oppose ICE and voter ID for one reason: power. When real Americans reject their agenda, they turn to illegal voting and mass amnesty to change the electorate. The SAVE Act stops that. Americans decide American elections.
Leader Schumer says SAVE Act will be dead on arrival in the Senate and warns of another GOP shutdown. So let's talk about the SAVE Act, because it's not just him.
Jim Crow style restrictions on voting. It wasn't Jim Crow a Democrat. Wasn't that all like Democrat stuff in the first place? And that's just the ridiculous like hyperbole that they go after, is just saying that, oh, it's going to have like the worst restrictions. Like, why? Give us an example as to why it would have Jim Crow style restrictions. They just immediately jump to conclusions without giving any context as to what the F they're freaking talking about.
Old dude out there, one Mitch McConnell, who many say is also holding this thing up.
Yeah, so again, in the Senate right now, they have this thing called the filibuster, and the Republican senators will not vote to remove that, even though it's been one of the main things that have been responsible for holding back President Trump's agenda. But I think what's most important here is that right now, unless the tool of a standing filibuster is implemented, Thune actually does not have the votes to actually get voter ID through in a traditional fashion. And so that's why when you saw my opposition to the SAVE Act, I also understand that Chuck Schumer wants to shut down the government so that he can stop all ICE operations. Let me be clear. Yesterday, Chuck Schumer also said he wants mass amnesty for over 22 million illegals. In fact, they are looking to actively replace American voters with illegal voters. That is from his lips directly. Now, we know that there's overwhelming support from Black, Hispanic, white, Asian Americans for voter ID. Everyone is seeming to have common sense on this topic except for the Senate. And so that is why there have been talks among the senators to include Leader Thune on something called the standing filibuster that actually has to be initiated in the House via parliamentary procedure. And so we will be voting on something called the Save America Act. That's something that President Trump wants and has championed. The Save America Act will include voter ID, but a number of other things that will secure the home front. And so that'll be coming. I think we'll be talking about it here in the next few weeks.
Well, where the hell is J.D. Vance on this? He's the vice president. He's the head of the Senate. Doesn't he have unilateral authority to put anything to the floor that he wants? Look, I don't know all the procedures and everything with the Senate. Obviously, I would say it seems obvious that he doesn't. Otherwise, he probably would have. However, I get it. If they just dropped it immediately to the floor for a vote, I mean, they're absolutely right. They're definitely not going to have 60 votes to get it to pass. So all it's going to simply do is just end up, getting rejected outright. But I just think this is insane that voter ID hasn't been federal law for over a freaking century, which kind of makes you wonder how much cheating and fraud and so on was going on back in, I don't know, like the 1800s, early 1900s, really kind of any point during the 20th century. I'm sure that there was probably quite a bit of funny business going on with regard to elections, especially maybe going back into the 1800s, even like post-Civil War era, like during Reconstruction where things were kind of chaotic. All right, so House Republicans, they hold a press conference today. We'll have a look at this and see if I can at least just get their opening statements. I didn't see any of this, so I'm not sure what they lead with, what they're speaking about. I assume it's the spending bill that they're going to be talking about.
That is going.
All right, here we go.
Oh my golly. Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope you all are staying warm and glad to see everybody. The sidewalks are starting to get de-iced, so that's a bonus, right?
Yeah, dude, I had frost on my car this morning. First time I've seen frost in like 16 years. On my car, at least.
No president has been stronger or more consistent on securing the border and removing criminal, illegal aliens from our communities, period. Strongest president ever. I have complete trust in President Trump that he will continue to enforce the rule of law, including each and every one of our immigration laws. So here's what we're going to do this afternoon. One, we're going to pass the legislation to finish funding more than 95% of the federal government at Trump spending levels, not Biden spending levels. And two, on the sliver that remains, we will keep the wheels of progress turning and let the president do what he does best, and that's negotiate a final deal on his signature issue. And I'll tell you what, if anyone can get this deal done that is going to crack down on illegal criminal aliens to protect our community, that's going to be President Donald J. Trump. So with that covered by our president, House Republicans are remaining focused on Americans' pocketbooks. Tax filing season began last week, and thanks to House Republicans, it's going to be easier than ever for working families to file their taxes. And why, you ask? Because Republicans expanded the standard deduction. To put it in plain English, the first $31,500 a family earns is tax-free. So the first $31,500 of every family, tax-free. And that does something else that's very important. It saves you time. About 210 million hours of paperwork.
Well, I'd sure like to hear them cutting government spending.
And that's 210 million hours and 210 million hours of time that the Americans people can spend on doing what they want to do, not filing their tax returns, burdensome tax returns. But here's what's really important that's missed. Every single Democrat voted against that $31,500 standard.
Well, of course
deduction.
they did, man. They're obsessed with taxes.
Every single Democrat voted against
Just look at blue cities, man. They've got long lists of taxes you got to pay.
Tax filing easier. And every single Democrat voted against saving you money. Remember, and I say this every time
because they believe they can spend your money better than you can.
Covered by y'all. Every single Democrat
the elites believe that too.
Voted to raise every single American's taxes. I'm going to say it again.
That's what Democrats always do.
Every single Democrat voted to...
Dude, that would be a great question for me to pose to Grok or Google or whoever. When was the last time that Democrats proposed a bill or even successfully passed a bill and had it signed into law that lowered taxes for Americans?
Raise your taxes. Please highlight that in your stories. I mean, I would think the Democrats would be proud to raise your taxes. They need to own that. Republicans are saving you time and saving you money. So this week, House Republicans are taking that message directly to the people. All across the country, we're reminding Americans exactly what happened and the impact that it will have on their families. Simply put, Republicans voted to make tax filing easier. Less bureaucracy. That's a good thing. Republicans voted to cut taxes for working families to keep more money in your pockets. Democrats, again, voted against that. Democrats want more bureaucracy, and Democrats
only
want
100%.
more of your hard-earned tax dollars. Democrats
Yeah,
want
didn't
to
Democrats
raise
try
your
to hire like
taxes.
another 85,000
Republicans want to
IRS
lower
workers during the
costs
Biden administration?
and keep more money in your pocket, simply put. So now I will turn it over to
some of
our
them were
whip,
going to be
who's
licensed
done
to
an
carry
amazing
firearms for
job,
some ridiculous
Mr.
reason.
You can raise this.
I mean, not that I'm advocating against that. I think everybody should carry a firearm.
We need some Earl.
All right, we'll just give it a minute, and then I'll go ahead and move on. We'll just hear where he's getting
Now I
at.
can actually see
Maybe the
what I'm
appropriations bill.
Once again, Republicans are making clear that we are the party of responsible governance. While Hakeem Jeffries foolishly urges his members to hold the American people hostage for the second time in less than 6 months, House Republicans are preparing to vote, as we've already done, to fund the government with individual appropriations bills.
Perfect. All right, that's exactly what I was hoping he would say, because we already know it was passed, so we can move on. All right, so let me just check and see what the answer to my question might be. All right, let's see. When was the last time Democrats passed a bill and signed into law that lowered taxes for Americans? The last major bill passed by Democrats with the Democratic president signing that included broad tax reductions for Americans was the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Interesting, by President Biden on March 11th. This law provided, temporary tax relief. Okay, all right, well then here, let me adjust my question then. Temporary, that ain't good enough. No, let's see, that lowered taxes permanently, whatever. All right, we'll see. We'll see what it says. Permanently, looks like the American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012, signed into law by President Barack Obama. And let's see what that was. Let's see, the bipartisan fiscal cliff deal. So this is probably during the fallout, maybe, of the 2008 crisis, perhaps. Deal made most of the Bush-era tax cuts permanent for individuals earning under $400,000 and married couples under $450,000. That's hilarious. All they really did was just codify the Bush-era tax cuts and just made it permanent. So that wasn't even a bill that they came up with. It was the Republicans under George Bush that ended up making those, or putting those taxes into play. Lower individual income taxes, reduced rates. All right. So I think I got I phrased it the correct way this time. When was the last time they drafted their own bill to lower taxes permanently, not including making tax cuts by Republicans permanent? So the last time Democrats drafted and passed their own bill under unified Democratic control without it primarily extending or making permanent Republican-initiated tax cuts like the Bush-era ones that permanently lowered taxes broadly for Americans was the Revenue Act of 1964. That was the last time that Democrats on their own, for a permanent basis, or at least as permanent as they can make it in Congress, last time they did that was in 1964 to lower our taxes by President Lyndon B. Johnson, February 26 of 1964. This Kennedy-Johnson era legislation permanently reduced individual income tax rates across the board, top rate from 91% down to 70%, also cut corporate tax rates from 52% to 48%, and included other permanent reductions to stimulate growth. So they were needing to stimulate growth. The Vietnam War started happening by then, right? 1964. I think it was like more or less kind of ramping up, if not maybe in full swing by then. I don't know. I'm not too knowledgeable at the exact timeline of the Vietnam War, but I'm pretty sure it was around that time. So yeah, anyway, there you go. So that was a hell of a long time ago. What was that, like 60 freaking 2 years ago, last time Democrats lowered taxes for Americans on their own. Okay, so we got another one from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, has been tapped by the president to oversee the sanctity and security of our American elections. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the president tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue most people want to see solved.
Tulsi Gabbard has been tapped by the President of the United States to oversee the sanctity and the security of our American elections. She's working directly alongside the FBI Director, Kash Patel. This is a coordinated whole-of-government effort to ensure that our elections, again, are fair and transparent moving forward. I don't see anything wrong with the President tasking a cabinet member to pursue an issue that most people want to see solved.
I'm sure presidents do that all the time.
But I know many Americans do want to make sure our elections are protected, and that's what Tulsi Gabbard is focused on doing.
Well, as far as my understanding goes, the DNI, they're already tasked with dealing with election integrity, election security as it pertains to the international stage. So it's not really in the realm of crazy to have Tulsi Gabbard head this initiative. I don't think it's out of the realm of, I don't know. I just don't think it's ridiculous in any way, shape, or form. I mean, they're already used to dealing with election meddling internationally, so why not just continue what they do, but just kind of make it like more internally as far as the 2020 election situation goes, because she was in Fulton County, Georgia, when the FBI executed a warrant to seize 700 boxes of ballots because they believe that there was some fraudulent activity going on, which I'm sure there was. I'm sure there was a lot of fraudulent activity going on. And the attorney, the U.S. attorney who signed off on that warrant was from Missouri, which happens to be the same state where the Dominion company, those Dominion voting machines, that's where they're headquartered. They just happen to be in Missouri. So maybe that's all connected. Maybe they discovered something in the Dominion voting system that raised serious alarm bells. So this is from Mark Wayne Mullen. It's the Russia hoax playbook. ODNI Gov has been investigating electronic voting systems to protect election integrity since April of 2025. Election security is a matter of national security, clearly within DNI Gabbard's directive from the president. Now let's pass the SAVE Act. Absolutely, could not agree more. So this is from Tulsi Gabbard herself. Contrary to the blatantly false and slanderous accusations being made against me by members of Congress and their friends in the propaganda media, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has and will continue to take action under my statutory authorities to secure our nation and ensure the integrity of our elections. And she's got a fairly long letter. It looks like it's 4 pages in total, unclassified, that she wrote to Congress under her letterhead, the DNI's letterhead, Director of National Intelligence. And I will repost that if you want to have a look at that letter, read it for yourself. You could also go to DNI Gabbard. That's her direct profile. That'll also be there, obviously. And she released that last night at 8:58 p.m. So you can scroll down the profile until you get to that point, 8:58 p.m. yesterday. And we'll move on to the next order of breaking. It's official. Bill and Hillary Clinton will be testifying in front of Congress regarding Jeffrey Epstein on February 26th and 27th. Once it became clear that we would hold them in contempt, the Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed, filmed depositions this month. House Oversight Chair Rep. James Comer said, "Make it all public. We, the people, deserve answers," and that we do. And I thought I dropped a comment. Well, anyway, basically what I said, actually, I might have actually reposted that instead. But this should already be televised for the American people, because the Jeffrey Epstein, or the Epstein Files Transparency Act, it includes everything except the victims' names. Anything and everything that has to do with Jeffrey Epstein must be released to the public. It's federal law now. It has to be released. So anything that they say is subject to public knowledge under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. So I don't know why they don't cite that and insist that the Clintons be hauled in front of Congress and paraded in front of the cameras, and we get to hear every single thing they say. And if they have to go into detail with regard to victims, then they do what they normally do. They'll do a public testimony, and then they'll do a behind closed doors one before or after. So that's what I think they should do. I don't think we're going to get that lucky, but it's kind of ridiculous that they're going to do that behind closed doors if that's what they're planning on doing. No one is above the law from House Republicans. For too long, the D.C. elite has operated under a different set of rules. Thanks to Chairman Rep. James Comer's leadership, we are ending the two-tier justice system by restoring the principle that every citizen is accountable to the law. The American people deserve the truth. This is from the Oversight Committee from earlier today at 12:45 p.m. Breaking: Clinton's cave and agreed to appear for depositions on February 26th and 27th. And Rep. James Comer, once again, it became clear that we would hold them in contempt. The Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed film depositions this month. No one is above the law. And this is from oversight.house.gov, where they go into some more detail on this. The House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform Chairman James Comer, Republican of Kentucky, today announced that former President Bill Clinton and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton have agreed to appear for transcribed film depositions to face questioning as part of the investigation related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's crimes. Former President Clinton will appear for a deposition on February 27th, and Hillary Clinton will be on February the 26th. And let's see, this is from Chairman Comer. So it says, quote, "Republicans and Democrats on the Oversight Committee have been clear. No one is above the law, and that includes the Clintons. After delaying and defying duly issued subpoenas for 6 months, the House Oversight Committee moved swiftly to initiate contempt of Congress proceedings in response to their non-compliance. Once it became clear that the House of Representatives would hold them in contempt, the Clintons completely caved and will appear for transcribed film depositions this month. We look forward to questioning the Clintons as part of our investigation into the horrific crimes of Epstein and Maxwell to deliver transparency and accountability for the American people and for the survivors." And let's see, what kind of background are they getting into? On July 23rd, Republicans and Democrats on the Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee unanimously approved by voice vote a motion to issue subpoenas to 10 people, including former President Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, for testimony related to the horrific crimes by Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell. Okay, so then it goes into a little bit more detail there. So I'll have that linked for you. And we will roll on to the next. I think we're going to get into a little bit of Epstein stuff. But first, Rep. Ted Lieu, Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing allegations of Donald Trump R-wording children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I decided to ask Grok, is there any validity to this claim? If so, please provide direct links to the most damning documents within the DOJ Epstein files. The reason why I said the most damning documents, because he claims that there's thousands and thousands, and I doubt that Grok is going to list thousands of things if this is indeed true. Trump appears over 1,000 times in recent Epstein files. They include unverified allegations of him R-ing a 13-year-old, but the DOJ calls these untrue and sensationalist. No evidence found of threats to kill children. See justice.gov/Epstein files, the FBI report on the allegation. So I guess the FBI issued a report on that. So let's see, what did it share here? All right, let me full screen this so we can see it a little. I mean, it's not that clear. I don't know why they couldn't make a better copy of it. But unclassified FBI intake from 2020 in October 27th. They got the case ID there. Epstein, Jeffrey, child S trafficking, received October 27th, 2023, 20 p.m. The details on October 27th, 2023, 20 p.m. Eastern Time, date of birth, blank, cellular telephone number, blank, called the FBI National Threat Operations Center unit to report potential information related to Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Blank provided the following information. Blank reported around 1997 he made contact with blank, date of birth blank, who he had known from 6 or 7 years prior as they had a son together. Blank and blank ended up dating. As blank explained, she was having money issues and problems with her daughters. Blank noted they were friends from before. During the contact in 1997, blank blank how to spell Ghislaine numerous times. As blank noted, she had taken her daughters up to see one of the supposed fathers who lived in Niagara Falls recently. Blank reported she met a lady who invited her daughters, blank, date of birth, so on and so forth, to a fancy hotel and met Donald Trump and some of his friends in 1997. Blank continued asking blank how to spell Ghislaine, implying Ghislaine had given her money and would give her additional money if needed. On Christmas Eve in 1999 or the day prior, blank was over visiting his son who he had blank years prior. Blank began talking to blank as she seemed to be acting strange and asked blank if he needed a ride home. Anyway, so is there any other mention of Trump? Okay, yeah. So blank asked blank about his time driving a limousine for 2 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. During blank time as a driver, he had met Donald Trump. Blank noted he picked the president up in 1995 and took him to the DFW airport. Blank reported some of the things President Trump had spoken about during the ride while on his cell phone were very concerning. Blank reported he was a few seconds from pulling the limousine over on the median and within a few seconds of pulling him out of the car and hurting him due to the things he was saying, as caller chose not to. Blank noted Trump continuously stated the name Jeffrey while on the phone and made references to abusing some girl. Blank was unsure who he was talking to, nor who he was referencing. As blank talked about his time at meeting Donald Trump, blank immediately blank the meter went stone cold as blank stated he R'd me. Blank said what as blank replied Donald J. Trump had R'd her along with Jeffrey Epstein. Noticed some girl with a funny name took me into a fancy hotel or building. That's how it happened. Anyway, it'll go on from there. Of course, everything I open, I link. So this will be below in the description if you want to have a look at this yourself. And let's see, is there anything else that it shares? Oh, wait, nope. Oh, okay, hold on. Let me just double check and see. Okay, so CNN article, also Time. There's a Time article as well. What is and isn't in the newly released Epstein files. Information of that, mentions of Trump. And we've got CNN. What 3 million new documents tells us about Trump's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. I'm not so sure if I would go as far as to believe every word of this. I'd probably take this with a massive grain of salt because at the end of the day, it is CNN. So FBI compiled Trump allegations last year. Trump didn't want this day to come. If he didn't want this day to come, then why the fuck would he sign the freaking Epstein Files Transparency Act? If he didn't want this to come out, why would he sign the freaking thing to begin with? That's stupid. That's ridiculous. New revelations from December drops. FBI interview notes discuss Trump. And yeah, it goes on. Obviously, it's going to be, way too much material for me to go through, at least here. I mean, maybe I might take the time to go through it over the weekend. But for now, I will leave those linked if you want to look into that yourself. And we'll have a look at this video from Rep. Ted Lieu, and we'll see what he says.
So why are Republicans so interested in Bill and Hillary Clinton? It's because they're trying to distract from the fact that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files thousands and thousands of times. In those files, there's highly disturbing.
Why don't you want Bill and Hillary Clinton to talk about it, though?
Allegations of Donald
something
Trump
you know that we
raping
don't?
children, of Donald Trump threatening to kill children. So I encourage your press.
Well, that's an outright lie, at least according to Crockett
these
is.
allegations, and I'm highly disturbed
or at least
that
it's
Deputy Attorney
unverified.
General Todd Blanche just got the law wrong. Yesterday, he said, essentially, that it is not a crime to party with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, that's actually not correct. If Jeffrey Epstein was human trafficking minors for these sex parties, and you show up and patronize the establishment at that party, yes, you're guilty because patronizing.
Well, where's your proof
is
Trump did that? There
part
is no
of the
proof of
law
that.
of the federal sex trafficking law. So
There's a little bit of hearsay from some limousine driver.
wrong, which maybe explains why they aren't investigating all these folks, including Donald Trump. He needs to read the law and investigate these people. He also needs to resign, not only for not knowing the law, but a massive, not only screw up, but the biggest privacy violation in history. They release a lot of pictures of minors unredacted, just violated the privacy of these girls.
You see, that's the catch-22. I don't even think that's even true. From what I heard, that there were some names that were unredacted by accident in the file somewhere because the DOJ was frantically trying to release those 3 million pages because they missed the deadline, and the Democrats were screaming at them over that. You missed the deadline. Release them now, yesterday. You're supposed to do it 20 days ago, 28 days ago, 29 days ago. So they were constantly screaming and breathing down their neck. So, of course, they were trying as quickly as they could to release everything. And as soon as they released everything on the day of, the DOJ came out and said that we believe we got everything redacted. If by any chance we missed anything, please let us know immediately so we can promptly remove it from the website, redact it, and we can put it back on. So.
Uncalled for what they did. The one thing that they could not do under this law was to invade the privacy.
No, there was more than one thing that they were not supposed to do, and one was to miss the deadline.
These
bozo.
Women now who were girls at the time who were victims of sex trafficking. Also, he met with Ghislaine Maxwell, moved her to a minimum security prison, and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons, he's just got to leave the Department of Justice.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What did you say?
Moved her to a minimum security prison, and then got a puppy for her. So for all those reasons.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to see if that's actually true. Okay, so I decided to go over to Google and avoid grok for this one. Did Ghislaine get a puppy in prison? Ghislaine Maxwell did not get a puppy of her own in prison, but she was reportedly granted access to play with a service puppy in training as part of alleged VIP treatment at federal prison camp in Bryan in Texas. She didn't receive a puppy. She doesn't own a puppy. She doesn't have a puppy. Sounds like for maybe like 3 minutes, she was allowed to pet a dog. That's at least what it sounds like to me. So, whatever, man. Anyway, I came across it, figured I might as well play it because, it came across the feed. It got 2.6 million views, so, it's worth at least bringing up. All right, so let's get into some of these new revelations in the Epstein files. First from Mario Nawfal. Why are names like this being redacted, and why is everyone okay with this? So it's to Jeffrey Epstein from blank. Thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty, sent from my iPhone, and that was in 2014, March 11th. Yeah. Why the hell are they redacting that? Because that's obviously not a victim. Doesn't sound like a victim now, does it? So let me just check and let's see. And I left this comment. Can you provide a direct link to this email with the DOJ Epstein files as well as a document ID? And it doesn't look like that it dropped one, but yeah, that's kind of interesting. Usually Grok drops that. I'm hesitant to click on this. So, all right. Well, with the magic of the pause button, I verified they're actually legit. It did say justice.gov, but you can't ever trust any links that you click on, especially when you're recording a video for YouTube. Anyway, so this is the first one that was shared, Jeffrey Epstein, 3/11/2014, and that's the email, and it's right here on justice.gov/Epstein/files data set, and then it's the document number EFTA 019305540, because every document that's in the Epstein files, they've assigned a document ID to every one of them, so that's why I asked Grok what the document ID might be. And here's another one. It looks like it's the same one. It's just in a different part of the Epstein files. EFTA 019305501. Is that the same one? I mean, it's the same email, definitely. Yeah, it looks like it was just the same link shared twice. So yeah, that was awesome to have shared that. I don't know why Grok didn't share it. Grok usually does that. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. And we've got 50 Shades of Way. In 2002, Ghislaine Maxwell's apparent nephew emails her a wish list of actresses he'd like to do nasty things to and ends it with, "Thank you very much for offering all of these things. WTF." And let me bring this down. All right, so it reads, let's see, it's in, well, obviously the 2 is redacted, from how do look. That's who it's from. It's all one word, all characters jumbled together, and sent on April 20th of 2002, 6:25 a.m. The subject is, "Dear Fairy Godmother. Hi, Aunt Ghislaine. I hope you are well. I look forward to seeing you when that might be. However, I'm not sure. I'll email you when I'm able to do something with you. As for my wish list of actresses I'd like to do nasty things to, though not complete, would probably look something like this. Number 1, Natalie Portman, Queen Amidala of the new Star Wars. Number 2, possibly Jennifer Love Hewitt. And number 3, Denise Richards. As for things I'd like to do, whether it be in London, New York, New Mexico, or the Caribbean, not sure or not quite sure at all, though. I will look into it. In New York, besides see the sights, probably or possibly some theater or something of that sort. Anyway, I've got to run. Thank you very much for offering all of these things. All these things only add up to the reason I would be there to see you, your nephew, blank. So why would they redact the nephew's name? Doesn't sound like a victim to me. Anyway, all right. So actually, let me double. Actually, it probably would have been better if I just read it that way. That was a lot larger. So let me see if Grok dropped this one. Okay, so yeah, the email is in the DOJ Epstein files, document ID EFTA 023333648. And this is the link to the email. And as you can see, if you want to pause it for a second, it is right there in black and white from your nephew. All right, from the Epstein files. So we got another that I'm going to get to here. From Rogue POTUS staff, absolutely grotesque email exchange between Epstein and a redacted individual who appears to have received underage girls for S from Epstein. Why is DOJ shielding this predator? Rep. Thomas Massey wanted to know which files should be viewed unredacted. This one right here. And okay, so that's the same one that we already looked at. The one that said, thank you for a fun night. Your littlest girl was a little naughty. Unbelievable. And we've got from further or alternatively from earlier today. This one is not redacted, just hard to understand. And from Jeffrey E., sent Thursday, October 29th, 2015, 5:41 p.m. to Richard Kahn. Priority is finding the 20M with Jocelyn. First step equals to torture. What? That is a bit disturbing. So let me see if it is going to be linked or not. After searching public sources, I couldn't find a direct link or document ID for that specific email in the DOJ Epstein files. It may be redacted or unreleased. Check the latest disclosures here, and it's just going to take me to just the DOJ files section, which that's where you can find everything. So, all right. So at least according to Grok, it couldn't find it. So maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Not 100% sure there. And we got this from Ounka. DOJ is removing Epstein files that mention Trump, allegedly. So just deleted. So apparently this was at an earlier date. Of course, they don't share the date. And then they show an updated number. So the one on the right, it says, they plug Donald Trump into the search bar, and it says showing 1 to 10 of 1,712 results. And then on the left, showing 1 to 10 of 1,513 results. And there's no dates. There's not really any context to it. Are they really redacting or deleting information pertaining to Trump? I don't know. Doesn't sound like that they would, because legally they're not allowed to be doing that. So let's have a look, shall we, and see what the number actually is. And this is on justice.gov/Epstein. Search the full Epstein library. I plugged in Donald Trump, showing 1 through 10 of 1,478 results. So neither of those numbers are accurate. 1,478. I mean, if it did originally say 1,712, then yeah, I might have a few questions as to why the number is smaller now. These numbers should only be getting bigger, not smaller. So anyway, that was shared. It got almost 10,000 likes, so it did get some attention on social media today. And let's move to GOP. When you do your job and keep your promises, Democrats want to impeach you. While Democrats continue defending illegals and criminals, Republicans will continue keeping Americans safe.
And if Kristi Noem won't go on her own, if President Trump doesn't tell her to step down, Democrats in Congress, we will impeach Kristi Noem. No must go. Okay, let's say it in Spanish. No must no.
Oh my God.
No must no. No must no. And if
These people are so stupid. It's hilarious. All right. Anyways, Homeland Security. 11 hours ago, this is a dishonest reporting by KTLA. All right, so let's have a look at this first from KTLA. A San Fernando Valley community is outraged and devastated after federal immigration agents forced their way onto the grounds of a church during a food giveaway and arrested a man who church officials say helps with children's ministries. Yeah, I'm sure he helps them. All right, full story, KTLA. I will give that a link. So first, let's go back and check with Homeland Security and see what they say about it. This is dishonest reporting by KTLA. KTLA omitted our official statement sent to them yesterday, which clearly states that U.S. Border Patrol did not target the United Methodist Church or its parking lot in North Hills, California. We look forward to them updating their story, but screenshots are forever. And they got the screenshots. Let's see. Carlos Chavez Guzman, an illegal alien from Mexico who was previously removed from the United States in 2016, chose to flee from law enforcement, which is a federal crime, leading officers on a foot chase before his arrest. This operation also resulted in the arrest of 2 other individuals from Mexico who have violated the immigration laws of our country. All 3 of these illegal aliens will remain in ICE custody pending removal. We encourage all illegal aliens to take control of their departure with the CBP Home app. The U.S. is offering illegal aliens $2,600 and a free flight to self-deport now. So KTLA has reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for comment on the incident, but did not receive an immediate response. Sounds like they did get one, you liars. The story will be updated when the Department of Homeland Security responds to KTLA's request for comment. Well, they responded. And here's the email that they sent from Media Inquiry, sent Monday, February 2nd, 2026 at 4:14 p.m. to redacted@ktla.com. The subject, read time-sensitive KTLA News Church Raid. Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin. U.S. Border Patrol did not target United Methodist Church or its parking lot in North Hills, California. And we already read all the rest of it. And I guess we'll have to see. But we'll take a look right now because I already got it right here in front of me. Let's do a bit of a zoom in. Get this to it. Yeah, here we go. Good size. It's usually at the bottom. All right. KTLA reached out to the Department of Homeland Security for comment on the incident and received a response on Monday afternoon. So they even said it was Monday afternoon, which it was. And, of course, we've got it right here. And it doesn't look like they manipulated the font size as mainstream news tends to do, even left-leaning local outlet news outlets. They typically do that whenever they update something that kind of flies in the face of the narrative that they're trying to direct their readers toward. They will shrink the size of the text to a smaller size than what the rest of the article shows to make it look like that it's just buried at the bottom of the webpage, fine print kind of nonsense. It doesn't look like they did that, though. They did italicize it. I don't know why they put it in italic. Oh, okay. So they probably did because it's a quote. So perhaps that's why they did it. But, okay. Well, you got to be fair. At least they did put it on their article. Even though DHS said that they responded pretty quickly. Like they responded immediately before they ran the article, but then they just decided to run it anyway. That sounds precisely what they did. They received a response from DHS before the article was ran, and they decided to ignore the email, and they ran the article anyway, and they just let it sit out there and simmer for, 24 hours or whatever, and then they decided to get around to, quote-unquote, checking their email to find the DHS response. I get the games that they play. That's the games they play, for sure, 100%. The White House, from 4 hours ago, Minnesota Democrats forced federal agents to expend significant resources to track down Esdras Aaron Rodriguez Hernandez. Sanctuary cities must assist federal law enforcement to end the chaos. Minnesota Democrats protected this violent illegal alien. The Trump administration is deporting him. The Trump administration will not relent in targeting the worst of the worst and putting American citizens, not violent criminals, first. And from Leader John Thune, the DHS bill needs to focus on protecting and ensuring that the law enforcement officers in this country are able to effectively function and do what the American people expect them to do. So we'll have a look at, see what he said about this.
Good afternoon, everyone. We appreciate the fact that the House has now acted and passed the legislation that was sent to them by the Senate last week that funds the 5 appropriation bills that were included in that package, and now we have fully 96% of the federal government funded. So that's a good win, a good day for the appropriations process, a process which enabled a lot of our members who in past years had not been able to participate because many of these things were negotiated behind closed doors in the leader's office, an opportunity to be heard and in a regular order when it comes to actually funding the government. So very appreciative of what the House did today. that bill will be headed to the president, and we will have fully 96% of the federal government funded. What that means is there's still another 4% that's not funded and is operating on a 2-week continuing resolution, which I had argued at the time was way too short to allow anything consequential to happen when it comes to resolving the issues around DHS. But that being said, the Democrats insisted on it. So those discussions will get underway. Katie Britt will lead that on our side, and but ultimately that's going to be a conversation between the President of the United States and the Democrats here in the Senate. What I hope it doesn't devolve into is something that
it will.
Makes it harder, not easier, to deport and detain dangerous illegal aliens in this country.
Well, dude, that should be a non-starter. You shouldn't even entertain anything like that.
And I also hope that it focuses on protecting and ensuring that the law enforcement officers,
because that's what Democrats are going to do, obviously,
are safe in their jobs, and that a lot of the tumult that we've experienced in some of our cities around the country starts to dissipate as they are able to effectively.
You ever get sick of Republicans playing nice all the time?
Expect them to do. So that's what's going to be happening, at least with respect to DHS. This week, as you know, we're going to be dealing with confirming judges, and then we'll be off to the next challenge. But a good accomplishment, I think, today in terms of ensuring that 96% of the federal government will be funded.
All right. Well, I wasn't sure where to place this video on the list, whether if it should have been placed up in the appropriations bill section or the immigration part. They mentioned DHS, so it found its way here. So we'll go ahead and move on to J.D. Vance. Jerry Nadler is one of the highest-ranking Democrats in the House of Representatives, and he is openly calling for people to shoot federal law enforcement. This is despicable behavior from an elected official, and I'm sure the left-wing media will cover it extensively. Of course they probably will. Either that, or they're going to see it as being, like, way over the top egregious. They're like, yeah, we probably shouldn't run this on the mainstream news because people are going to think that we're full-on psychotic as a political party. Anyway, it says here is crazed lunatic Rep. Jerry Nadler likening immigration enforcement to attacks by masked hoodlums. If you were attacked by a masked person, you might think you were being kidnapped. You'd be justified in shooting the person.
What is really the major problem in this country today is the fascism in our streets.
Fascism. What a
attacks
dick.
On American
moron.
Citizens.
Loser.
By masked hoodlums. If you were attacked by a masked person, you might think you were being kidnapped. You'd be justified in shooting the person to protect yourself.
See, they'll say and do anything to try to seize power by brainwashing anybody and everybody that would take the time to listen to them. Somebody who is not in any way well-read in politics whatsoever. Just the brain-dead rabble that's just parading in the streets, smashing windows, throwing bricks at cops, and all the following, nonsense that they've been engaged with for how many years now? What, I would say like maybe 6 years, but realistically, they've probably been engaging in nonsense, terroristic behavior for even longer than that. The outrage mob. All right, Homeland Security, the men and women at ICE, CBP, and all of our federal law enforcement agencies put their lives on the line to arrest violent, criminal, illegal aliens. They are heroes who defend the lives of Americans every day. Make no mistake, these activists and sanctuary politicians will not slow us down. DHS law enforcement will continue to remove murderers, pedos, and terrorists, and gang members from our country. And they're responding to Congressman Greg Cesar, who is a Democrat, of course. Today, I stood outside ICE headquarters with other House Democrats to demand an end to Kristi Noem's reign of terror at ICE and an end to Donald Trump's mass deportation policies. Well, how'd that work out for you, dude?
Hey, guys, it's Greg, and I'm standing outside of the ICE headquarters to demand the impeachment of Kristi Noem, to demand an end to her reign of terror at ICE, to demand an end to Donald Trump's mass deportation machine. I was here with dozens of members of Congress.
They just can't stop that virtue signaling.
To say we do not need an entire...
I'm telling you, I think Democrats truly believe that the vast majority of people who are Democrats right now are those who are out protesting. Like in Minneapolis last weekend, I saw numbers here and there. The number that I just personally decided to settle on was like, okay, let's give it to them and say 100,000 people showed up to protest in Minneapolis over the weekend. It was a large crowd. Let's say it was 100,000 people. Well, the metro population of Minneapolis is just shy of 4 million people. So if 100,000 people showed up, that would be roughly 2.5% of the metro population. So not exactly an enormous number. It doesn't sound like the majority of the Democratic Party was representing themselves out there. Yeah, okay, I'll give it to them. It was cold, but they were also doing mass protests in places like L.A. They were also doing the same thing out there. I think that the crowd out in L.A. was a lot smaller than the one in Minnesota or Minneapolis. So, and I mean, I don't even have to get into details as to how large the population is in L.A. How come there weren't 1 million people out there if they were so worried about it?
Paramilitary force and ICE separating our families, attacking workers, attacking communities, and killing people in broad
No, it's actually the opposite. They're being attacked by the outraged mob, far leftists.
To march in the street, to make your voices heard, and say it's time to fire Kristi Noem and end Donald Trump's chaos.
So he's advocating for illegal activities. I don't think you're allowed to march in the street unless you have a permit from the city, right? Isn't that how protesting's supposed to work? Yeah, whatever. Dude's from Texas. That's even more funny. All right. Yeah, I mean, look, there's how many members of the House are there? It's like 435 members. It's kind of hard to try to memorize all of them. But anyway, having these little badges next to their names certainly helps. You know, that's how I can typically tell whether if he's a Republican or a Democrat. Because if it's the dark blue right here, that means he's a Democrat. If it's a red, then he's a Republican. Unless I think it's in the Senate. I think in the Senate, the Republicans have like a dark gray badge. So anyway, rapid response press secretary. I didn't hear Chuck Schumer or Democrats speaking that way of ICE agents under President Barack Obama, who deported hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens from our country. That's all the president and Secretary Kristi Noem with DHS and this entire administration are seeking to do.
I think it's incredibly irresponsible for elected Democrats to refer to ICE agents and Border Patrol
look at that
agents
snow, man.
who have their jobs, by the way,
DC is
because
blanketed.
of the laws that were enacted and passed by the United States Congress. These are legitimate law enforcement organizations that rest within the Department of Homeland Security that have been enforcing our nation's border and our nation's immigration laws for years. I didn't hear Chuck Schumer or Democrats speaking that way of ICE agents under President Barack Obama, who deported hundreds of thousands of criminal illegal aliens from our
Amen.
country. That's all President Trump, Secretary
what do you
Noem,
say,
and this
Democrats?
entire administration are seeking to do. Targeted law enforcement operations of illegal alien criminals who broke our nation's laws, especially those who have committed heinous acts of violence against the American people. And it is a mandate that the president was elected upon to secure our homeland and to carry out these deportations. And it's something he will never waver in his commitment in, because why? A country without borders, a country without laws will cease to be a country at all. Now, there can be policy discussions and debates about how those tactics are enforced. And I know Congress will be having those discussions in the coming days. But as far as the underlying principle of enforcing our nation's laws and protecting our border, that is something this president will never waver on, because he knows it's what the American people elected him to do.
Yeah, and these people are just a bunch of idiots. They just literally believe anything that's told to them, and whichever the way the wind blows, whichever the direction the Democrats want them to go, they just blindly follow. It's just the perfect example of what's described as an NPC, a non-playable character. That's what all these protesters are, and like those memes that they show with like the back of an NPC's head. They open the hatch and they remove the Ukraine flag. Then they insert the Palestine flag. Then they remove the Palestine flag and they insert the Venezuela flag. And then they remove the Venezuela flag. And then they insert anti-ICE messaging and so on and so forth. All right. Next order, LMAO. Some tranny started berating a black ICE agent, and the agent looked at him right in the eyes and said, "Are you a man?" That absolutely set off the man dressed up as a woman, who then called the agent the N-word. Leftists prove once again they are the real racist. Yeah, of course they are. They always have been. They've always been the racist. Democratic Party, man. And they certainly live underneath it.
Families should be ripped apart. That's kind of our energy. Like we should rip people apart from their families.
Oh yeah, by the way, this is the X platform after all, so I do have to mention that the N-word might be said here. It's probably not going to get bleeped out because this isn't YouTube, so just full disclosure.
Wow. Wow, is that a question?
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Fucking house nigga in here. Sir, I need to move. Fucking house nigga.
He said, sir. Uh-oh.
Why are you calling a woman a man?
Sir, move.
What kind of a guy does that?
Fucking house nigga, bitch.
Get triggered. He smiled at him. He gives the finger. It's hilarious.
A warning for what, sir? A warning for what?
Warning to quit following our vehicle.
Because?
Because we're conducting law enforcement operations.
Yes, and we're allowed to film you doing those law enforcement operations. We still have a First Amendment, sir. We are not impeding your operations. We're merely filming them.
Now you are interfering with our operations. You do not continue to follow.
I mean, look, technically you are allowed to film in public. However, you're probably not allowed to stalk federal agents. Okay, we got another one next door to our LMAO. An ICE vehicle was seen endlessly doing laps around a traffic circle in Minnesota, distracting leftist activists while the rest of the ICE convoy moved on to the next target. Arrests were then made uninterrupted. Well played, ICE. That sounds hilarious. All right, we'll just mute that. ICE agents in Minneapolis playing Ring Around the Rosie with neighbors. I'm assuming that's the ICE agent. It's going around and around as they stalk them and follow them everywhere, blowing their R whistles constantly. Oh my God, that's funny, dude. They probably did that. If they kept going, it probably just went around and around for how long? How long would you guess? 20 minutes? 35 minutes? When did they finally get the idea that, oh, maybe this ICE agent's fucking with us? Fucking idiots. All right, Stephen Miller, an unelected judge, has just ruled that elections, laws, and borders don't exist. This is from Breaking 911. Breaking, a Washington, D.C.-based federal judge, Anna Rees, a Biden appointee, has blocked DHS from ending temporary protected status, or TPS, from more than 350,000 Haitians in the U.S. whose legal protections were set to expire tomorrow, a move that would have left them vulnerable to deportation and the loss of work authorization. And like the argument is that these are good, honest people, and it would be way too dangerous to send them back to Haiti because Haiti's in chaos, even though I believe they're in the process of rebuilding their government right now. So, it's probably always chaotic in Haiti to some degree or another. But if you remove all the good people from a country, what are they left with? Bad people. So maybe all the good people should return back and get their country back in order. At least that would just be my opinion. Plus, they've been here for like 15 years after the earthquake. I think that's when those 350,000 people first arrived here. And after all, at the end of the day, what the hell does temporary even mean? So we got another one. Homeland Security temporary protected status was designed to be just that, temporary. Haiti's TPS was granted following an earthquake that took place over 15 years ago. It was never intended to be a de facto amnesty program, yet that's how previous administrations have used it for decades. President Trump and Secretary Noem are restoring integrity to our immigration system and will continue to enforce federal immigration law.
Temporary protected status for Haitians, and a judge yesterday said that the Department of Homeland Security is wrong in what they're trying to do. He said that Noem's national interest analysis focuses on Haitians outside the U.S. or here illegally, ignoring that Haitian TPS holders already live here, and legally so, and she ignores altogether the billions Haitian
not as of
TPS
tomorrow.
holders contribute to the
That's
economy.
when it expires, man.
How do you feel about that one?
I think it's a whole lot of word salad. I think it is a lawless and naked activism from the bench. It looks like we will be bringing this to the Supreme Court. We believe we will be vindicated. Dana, this is a program, temporary protected status, that is designed to be temporary. Haitians were given temporary protected status 15 years ago because of an earthquake.
Yeah, frankly, they probably should have left probably 13 years ago.
This can't be de facto amnesty in this program. That's not what it was designed to be. With the Trump administration.
I mean, that doesn't even really make any sense anyway. Why would you allow them to leave their country after an earthquake, just abandon their country during the worst possible time that you could possibly have mass outward migration from a country after they suffered a major earthquake? Don't you think that they would require all hands on deck to try to rebuild the country? Instead, we just scooped 350,000 of them and just had them just leave the country altogether.
And what President
that doesn't
Trump
make a lot of
and
sense
Secretary
to me.
Noem are actually bringing integrity back into the system. And we also have to look at the vast amount of abuses that have happened under TPS. Gang members, known and suspected terrorists, people with rap sheets from their own country, including murder and other heinous crimes, are coming into our country, creating national security crisis. We've got to get back to the basics. We've got to get back to security and bringing in only the best into this country.
Well, even if they vetted everybody and they did not allow any criminals or anybody to get in, it's still temporary at the end of the day. 15 years, that is pretty far from temporary. Speaker Mike Johnson, in the press gaggle following today's vote, I was asked to defend the biblical case for border security and immigration enforcement. I did so and then promised to post a longer explanation that I drafted during the Biden administration. Here it is, and I hope that it's helpful. And his post is quite long. It goes for quite a ways, so I'm not going to have time to go through all of it. As I always do, I will give that a repost. Matter of fact, I already did, but let me undo it and then repost it again, so that way it pops up to the top of my profile. However, I will read this section. Borders are biblical. Many on the left today, and even some at the highest levels of our government, consider themselves globalists. Of course they do. Who envision a utopian world order where there are no borders between countries at all. Their fantasy will simply never be realized in their basic premise that man is inherently good and perfectible on his own is the opposite of the biblical truth that man is fallen and in need of redemption that is available only through salvation in Jesus Christ. The Bible speaks favorably and consistently about distinct nations of people. See Genesis chapter 18, verse 18. Let's see. Oh man, what is Num? I forgot what Num was. What is that? The book of Numbers, maybe? If it is, it's Old Testament. I'm not very well read in Old Testament, to be honest. But that's chapter 32, verse 17. Psalm chapter 67, verse 2. Matthew chapter 20, verse 19, and Revelations chapter 5, verse 9, chapter 7, verse 9, and about borders and walls that are built to guard and secure people, property, and jurisdictions. And see Deuteronomy, I think that's Deuteronomy, isn't it? Chapter 19, verse 14, chapter 27, verse 17, chapter 32, verse 18, Acts chapter 17, verse 26, when Nehemiah heroically led the Jewish remnant to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem after their enemies had destroyed those walls. He was doing the noble work of God. And maintaining a secure border is not an offensive measure, but a wise defensive one to prevent chaos and safeguard innocent life. As Reverend Franklin Graham once summarized, why do you lock your doors at night? Not because you hate the people on the outside, but because you love the people on the inside so much. That is very true. Looks like maybe I found it here. Let's see. Janine Pirro, message to my fellow gun owners, put your safety back on. Let's have a look and see.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here in the office, and some people are concerned about something I said yesterday, so I want to be crystal clear. I am a proud supporter of the Second Amendment. I have guns myself, long guns, handguns, and I'm a proud high-heeled gun owner. In fact, I even keynoted an NRA convention. However, you need to be responsible, and every responsible gun owner that I know makes sure that they understand the laws, where they are going, and understand whatever registration requirements there might be. President Trump's goal here, and my goal as well, is to make sure we take guns out of the hands of criminals. There is a reason that we have the lowest homicide rate in recorded history. We're taking guns off the street, illegal guns in the hands of criminals who want to use those guns to victimize law-abiding citizens. There's a big difference here. You're responsible, you follow the laws, you're not going to have a problem with me.
Well, look, I would say what everyday honest law-abiding citizens should be doing is carrying guns themselves. So if somebody tries to pull a gun on them, they could blow their head off. I mean, that's really what they should be doing. Not that I'm exactly advocating for violent criminals to be carrying guns around. That's always been a big conundrum of mine because I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, at least as far as I can as far as I can fathom it. I think everybody should be allowed to carry guns, even if somebody is sentenced to prison for a violent crime, they do their time, they pay their debt back to society, maybe they even pay restitution. I'm not exactly opposed to them getting their gun rights back. It's just my own personal opinion. Look, very different schools of thought on that. Very contentious schools of thought on that. Honestly, I don't know if that was actually the one that they were pushing back on. So she had this video from 10 hours ago. Beloved father was murdered here in Washington, D.C. over $20. His murderer, Julius Worthy, was arrested, arrested the next day by Metro PD, still soaked in blood. Today, the murderer is behind bars. I don't think that's probably it. I'm assuming maybe that was the video that they're pushing back on. But maybe there was something else that, let's see, shot here in D.C., spoke to his parents earlier. Yeah, that doesn't sound like that might be it. But anyway, she posted that message. It came across my feed, so I included it. So there you go. And we'll move on to the next thing from Libs of TikTok. The feds just discovered an illegal biolab in Las Vegas. The owner of the property is a Chinese national who was previously arrested in connection to an illegal biolab in California. They found pathogens labeled HIV, malaria, TB, COVID-19, Ebola, probably a whole bunch more. Do we have sound? No, it doesn't look like there's any sound. It's like straight up in somebody's backyard, man. That's crazy. Makes you wonder, what the hell was he planning on doing with all that? Holy cow, man, this is 2 minutes? Obviously in their garage, it would seem. He had a freaking refrigerator. I mean, what the hell was they? What were they doing with all this shit? Freaking Ebola. They were planning on going around infecting people, probably. I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people tour in Las Vegas. A lot of people flying in and out of Las Vegas. Somebody gets pinpricked on the strip with a little bit of Ebola, a little bit of malaria. Maybe that was what they were aiming for. Yet you definitely can't trust the Chinese. That's for damn sure. Trying to kill us all with freaking fentanyl and everything else. All right, so yeah, it just looks like they're just digging everything out of the fridge, the freezer. So, yeah, there you go, man. In Las Vegas, that's a little nerve-wracking. I'll repost that because I didn't play the whole thing. Anyway, rolling on to rapid response from the press secretary. CENTCOM did make the decision to shoot down that Iranian drone. It was unmanned. It was acting aggressively toward our USS Lincoln. As for the president, he remains committed to always pursuing diplomacy first, but in order for diplomacy to work, of course, it takes two to tango.
Today, I did speak with folks over at the Pentagon this morning who said that CENTCOM acted both appropriately and necessarily to protect our U.S. personnel and equipment in the region. So
CENTCOM is U.S. Central Command, by the way.
Shoot down that Iranian drone. It was unmanned. It was acting.
I think their primary area of responsibility is Middle East. I think
USS Lincoln,
I mean, it makes sense. The Iranian drone
is in the region at the direction of President Trump. As
Yo,
for the
was that a
president,
Raptor?
He remains committed to always pursuing diplomacy first. But in order for diplomacy to work, of course, it takes two to tango. You need a willing partner to engage. And so that's something the president and Special Envoy Witkoff are exploring and discussing right now. Special Envoy Witkoff is set to have conversations with the Iranians later this week. Those are still scheduled as of right now. But of course, the president has always a range of options on the table, and that includes the use of military force. The Iranians know that better than anyone. Just look no further than the highly successful Operation Midnight Hammer, which took not just Iran, but the entire world by surprise and completely obliterated their nuclear capabilities earlier last year.
Well, of course we did. President Trump said he'd do it again. USA in Spanish in Espanol 12 hours ago. The president on Cuba, they're not getting money from Venezuela or anywhere else. It's a failed nation. Mexico will stop sending them oil. We're dealing with the Cuban leaders right now. That is very interesting, man. Are we going to start striking deals with freaking Cuba? Is it possible in my lifetime I would have an opportunity to visit Cuba as a tourist? That'd be nice because I've lived very close to Cuba for a very long time, and I've never thought I would ever even have the chance to even visit. I would if it were safe, if it were nice and safe, and I don't know, like maybe back to the way it was. Like when was it? Like the 1950s or something like that. All right, so the president on Cuba, they're not getting any money from Venezuela, and they're not getting any money from anywhere. It's a failed nation. Mexico is going to cease sending them oil, so I'm basically already read that.
It's a failed nation now, and they're not getting any money from Venezuela, and they're not getting any money from anywhere. It's a failed nation. Mexico is going to cease sending them oil. So I'd like to take care of the people that are here from Cuba. You know, we have many people that came from Cuba that were thrown out of Cuba or that fled
yeah, probably
Cuba.
millions at this point.
They came over on rafts. They went through shark-infested waters.
Yeah, back in 1980, early 80s,
and it
late
was
70s.
Many years ago. Many would like to go back. Many would like to at least visit their relatives. And I think we're at a pretty close point. We are dealing with the Cuban leaders right now. It's a failed nation.
All right, man. We'll see how that goes. Maybe one day we'll get to enjoy Cuban cigars legally. That'd be kind of nice. At least get to go to your local cigar store and pick up one. I never had a Cuban. I would certainly try one. Rand Paul, Congress alone decides when America goes to war. Calling a military strike law enforcement does not change the Constitution. If a foreign power bombed our defenses and seized our president, no one would deny it. it was an act of war, the standard has to apply both ways. Well, first of all, Nicolas Maduro was not a president. He wasn't a legitimate president. I guess if you want to give him the most amount of credit, he overstayed his welcome. But anyway, I said, what the hell are you talking about? Maduro was not a legitimate president. The vast majority of Venezuelans, I misspelled, celebrated because he literally stole the presidency. And this is from the American Conservative with regard to Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And let's get into this a little bit. So Donald Trump said in 2016 to the Republican National Convention, we must abandon the failed policy of nation building and regime change. Earlier this month, after the current administration launched a war against Venezuela, we didn't launch a war against them at all. There was no war launched or declared. We served an arrest warrant, but the only way to execute that arrest warrant was to use the military because we were going after Nicolas Maduro, who's the dictator of a freaking country. One might say change the regime of President Nicolas Maduro, Trump said. We are going to run the country until such time we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. Well, I don't think that we're exactly running the country. What's her name? The lady who was the vice president, she was, she took the position as the president of Venezuela, and it sounds like she's pretty much running things with, the U.S. keeping a close eye. I mean, I'm sure everything that happens in Venezuela is probably going to go through the U.S. As far as what that actually looks like, I'm not so sure. They're kind of tight-lipped on it, as far as I know. They're going to run the country until such time we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. U.S.-led regime change in Venezuela seemed to fly in the face of Trump's prior warnings against regime change wars, but the president's defender said this was a different kind of military operation, unlike the Iraq, Libyan, and Syrian interventions Trump had once bemoaned. Well, and it's not even a regime change. Nicolas Maduro wasn't even the legitimate president anyway. I mean, if anything, we executed the arrest warrant to arrest a narco trafficker, a freaking drug criminal, and now that he's out of the way, the actual real president can step in and govern Venezuela. That's the thinking of Secretary of State Marco Rubio brought when he testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday. When asked by committee member Senator Rand Paul why the administration waged war against Venezuela without consulting Congress, as the Constitution demands, Rubio said that it was merely a law enforcement operation, not a war. Well, that is what it was. Paul asked, describing the actions the U.S. took against Venezuela, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war? And Rubio replied, I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career, no matter who's in charge. Paul has posed similar challenges to the Obama, Trump, and Biden administration's foreign policy actions in the Post. And I have a feeling this is going to go on a ways. So I'll just leave it there, and we'll just have to rock and roll on to the next. From Secretary Rubio himself, met with the Indian, which is not, obviously it's not going to be related, met with Indian External Affairs Minister, and I am not going to get his name right, so there's his name displayed for you, to discuss our bilateral cooperation, our critical minerals exploration, and work together to unlock new economic opportunities between our two countries. We also commended the trade deal between the United States and India. So that is ongoing. Finally, we're starting to widen the scope of trade between the U.S. and India. I mean, India is the world's most populated democracy, so it kind of seems to make sense. Plus, a sizable portion of their population speaks English. So, I mean, that kind of seems to make sense to me. And yeah, all right. Anyway, that's just a meme. So we'll roll on. I think I got another one with regard to this. Maybe not. Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is it's regarding India from the U.S. Trade Representative. It's Jameson Greer. He says India will lower tariffs on a wide array of U.S. industrial and agricultural goods to 0%. President Trump's historic deal with India delivers unprecedented market access for American farmers and producers. And the White House announced this trade deal yesterday, which I talked about on the Swamp last night on Monday's episode. So let's hear Jameson Greer.
The time has come, and now we have the deal. We'll finish papering it, but we know the specifics, we know the details. It's a very exciting opportunity. On the one hand, we'll continue to maintain some level of tariff against India, 18%, because we have this giant trade deficit with them. But they've also agreed to reduce their tariffs for us on a variety of agricultural products, manufactured goods, chemicals, medical devices, etc. It's an exciting opportunity for both countries.
Yeah, just in case you're wondering, he actually laid that out pretty simply. Like, why would India accept a 0% on our end, and they have to pay us 18%. It's because we've had a trade deficit for decades, for a long time, not just with India, but from pretty much every country on earth. So that's basically how it works, because we had to keep paying tariffs, but nobody else was really having to pay tariffs whenever they were importing stuff from us. And from U.S. Southern Command from 12 hours ago, aircraft carriers, warships, state-of-the-art fighter jets, advanced aircraft, and elite warriors, the formidable Joint Task Force Southern Spear remains deployed in the Caribbean to disrupt criminal networks, combat narco-terrorism, and deter malign actors. This powerful joint force underscores the U.S. commitment to regional security and stability. U.S. military forces deployed in the Southcom area of responsibility are supporting Operation Southern Spear operations directed by the Department of War and the President's priority to protect the homeland. And it's pretty much a copy-paste post from one of them that I read from last night, but this is a different and longer video, so I figured I'd play this. All right, man, there you go. Lots of footage in the Southcom area of responsibility, the Caribbean, Central America, South America. I always like showing that stuff. Military stuff's cool. All right, from FEMA, during disasters, faith-based and voluntary organizations are reliable, essential partners working with us to support different aspects of the disaster response led by state and local officials. Here's some recent examples. Texans on Mission is preparing and serving 3,600 meals daily at a temporary shelter at Fair Park in Dallas, Texas. Austin Street Center and Our Calling are partnering to operate the shelter, which has filled over 1,000 beds and has space available for anyone needing shelter. So that's happening in Texas. And this one, United DCA, United Cajun Navy is providing medical transport and delivering supplies such as fuel and generators to families and individuals in hard-to-reach areas across multiple states impacted by the winter storm, which would be Winter Storm Fern. And let's see who this is. God's Pit Crew. They're deploying their immediate disaster response teams to Tippah County, Mississippi. Teams are conducting hazardous tree removal, installing emergency roof tarps, distributing critical relief supplies, and providing emotional support to survivors. That's awesome, man. Very cool. Were those I think those were the only... Oh, no. Okay, so we got... Oh, no, never mind. That's just another image from United Cajun Navy. And let me just double check, see if that was it. Yeah, that looks like those are the only ones that they shared. But still, that's pretty cool, man. Rolling on to Undersecretary of War, Emil Michael. Touchdown at Blue Origin for the next stop on the Arsenal of Freedom tour. The new space age will be defined by American dominance and innovation. As the Secretary of War made clear, this is about total orbital supremacy. I'm assuming that they're engaging in talks with Blue Origin over the Golden Dome. I'm sure that's probably what they're meeting over, and they're talking about ironing out certain details, seeing what Blue Origin can do for them. Probably working on some very, very high-level, extremely expensive government contracts. And we got this from Maha Action. This is crazy. Look at this. NIH Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya says the NIH has found a cure for sickle cell anemia. Some NIH investments have a track record of success. For example, just this year, decades-long work of NIH-supported researchers culminated in not just one, but 2 new gene therapies to cure sickle cell anemia. When I was in medical school learning about sickle cell disease, I never expected to see a cure in my lifetime. And yet, here we are, thanks to NIH-supported research.
Some NIH
that is
investments
huge news.
have a track record of success. For example, just this year, decades-long work of NIH-supported researchers culminated in not just 1, but 2 new gene therapies to cure sickle cell anemia. When I was in medical school learning about the sickle cell disease, I never expected to see a cure in my lifetime, and yet here we are, thanks to NIH-supported research. NIH-funded researchers built on this gene editing technology to deliver personalized treatment to an infant with rare, previously fatal disease. You may have heard of baby KJ. The treatment was supported by the NIH Common Fund, which with Senator Cassidy you mentioned, the Common Fund Somatic Cell Genome Editing Program. But despite these incredible successes, we can do more and we can do better.
All right, man. We'll see where that goes. That's absolutely incredible. I'm not sure how long or how soon it will be available to the public or what that's even going to look like. Doesn't sound like it's something as simple as taking a few pills and you're suddenly cured. Sounds like that it's in like the genetic level, talking about stem cells and all that. So maybe it's maybe they have to do genetic profiles on babies before they're born, and maybe they have to do some work as far as like during the pregnancy stage. I have no idea. I don't even know. That's my first time hearing about it. But still, I mean, if they can find a way to cure it, that's fantastic news. All right, HHS has appointed Diana Diaz-Harrison as the new National Autism Coordinator, a role that strengthens coordination across federal autism research, services, and support. And what was the number for autism? It's like 1 in 35 Americans have been diagnosed with autism. And it was like back in like 1990, it was something like 1 in 15,000 or something along those lines. It's gone absolutely just off the rails. Diaz-Harrison currently serves as Principal Deputy Director at ACL. ACL's Administration on Disabilities, and brings senior leadership experience across multiple federal agencies with a strong background in disability policy, public engagement, and cross-government coordination. Diaz-Harrison is nationally recognized autism and disability advocate with experience across education, healthcare, workforce development, and community-based systems, including founding and leading autism-focused charter schools. In this role, she will help advance collaboration across HHS and federal partners to better support individuals with autism and their families. So that's good news, especially if you have someone in your family with autism. At least you know in HHS they've got a new autism expert at the helm. And from the White House, the Great White House Ballroom. So that's what it's expected to look like, which definitely looks like an extension of the White House. It's definitely what it appears to be. All right. And President Trump says this beautiful building will be, when complete, the much anticipated White House Ballroom, the greatest of its kind ever built. It is a rendering from the Treasury Building directly across the street and replaces the very small, dilapidated, and rebuilt many times East Wing, with a magnificent new East Wing consisting of a glorious ballroom that has been asked for by presidents for over 150 years. Being an identical height and scale, it is totally in keeping with our historic White House. It is the first rendering shown to the public. If you notice, the north wall is a replica of the north facade of the White House, shown at the right-hand side of the picture. This space will serve our country well for hopefully centuries into the future. President Donald J. Trump. And yeah, certainly does look like an extension of the White House. Off to the right? I think that's what he's talking about. Okay. I think there was something else that was included, not just Trump's Truth Social. Was that all they had? Yeah, it looks like it. Okay. All right. Anyway, heading on to the next from the U.S. Census Bureau from 11 hours ago. The Q4 2025 homeownership rate of 65.7% was virtually the same as the rate in the fourth quarter of 2024. Well, and the reason I think is because nobody can buy a home because they can't afford it because housing is too damn expensive. So, of course, it's not going to move. People trying to sell their house, there's nobody who's got enough money to buy their house, so they're just stuck staying at their house. And people who would like to buy a house, they just can't afford to buy one. So it doesn't seem all that shocking to me that the number is exactly the same as it was a year ago. The Q4 2025 rental vacancy rate of 7.2% was not statistically different from the rate in the fourth quarter of 2024, which is 6.9%. Yeah, that also sounds about on par. Some people graduated high school or they're getting out of college. They're entering the workforce, moving into adulthood. So, it seems maybe possible that, the numbers would fluctuate a little bit with the rental vacancy rate. Maybe a lot are moving back in with their parents, which would bring the number down because, times are getting tough out here for the middle class. And these are the images that they shared. Homeownership rate, current fourth quarter of 2025, 65.7% for homeownership, and then the rental vacancy rate. So, it's going up, which is definitely a good thing. If you're looking for cheaper rent, that's a good sign for the vacancy rate to go up, because the more vacant units there are, I would say the lower that they're going to have or the more they're going to have to drop their rent prices in order to fill those vacancies. And that's going to be at census.gov. Let me go ahead and post that tab so I can get that included in the description. From Lee Zeldin, 3 years ago today, East Palestine, Ohio suffered a devastating train derailment. Last year, my first trip as EPA administrator was with the vice president to this community on the second anniversary. President Trump and Vice President Vance were immediately on scene 3 years ago and have continued to stand with this resilient community. And it's got some photos. There's EPA's Lee Zeldin there speaking. There he is again, and once more. So I remember when that happened, man. That was crazy. But they kind of, at least from my perspective, they seem to kind of have buried that story fairly quickly, which, of course, the way the news media goes these days, it's like constantly moving at a million miles an hour. They're trying to overload us with just information so we keep our eye off the ball from the most important things out there. Not to say that East Palestine was not important. It was very important. I mean, that was an absolute disaster. Okay, so Kelly Loeffler, the Trump administration rushed $3.2 billion in SBA relief to Los Angeles after the wildfires, yet more than a year later, the story is still the same. Empty lots, devastated communities, and thousands of survivors stalled by local permitting delays. Last week, President Trump took action to cut through the red tape, and SBA is now offering a new path forward to let borrowers bypass the backlogs and begin rebuilding their lives. We've got a video she shared.
More than a year since the Palisades fires ripped through the LA area, destroying thousands of homes.
There are growing concerns over the pace at which permits are being issued to rebuild.
Checking in on what's happening, or in some cases,
I would have used the word fury.
Not happening.
The city has been miserably slow in issuing permits, only about 14 or 15%.
Like everybody else I've talked to, they can't get permits.
All the promises that were said to us, none of them are coming through.
Welcome to the Democrat Party, sir.
Close to moving back in?
No, it's going to be 2 years for us to get back home.
Oh, that's laughable if you think it's only going to be 2 years.
I don't have a permit yet.
Try 10.
None of our friends have a permit yet.
We've had
of course, unless Trump gets involved.
Plans like 5 times.
There's very few cases where, the foundation's being poured.
1 year later, we're no better off than we were days after the fire.
It's a nightmare. The things you have to go through with the city.
Frustrated is an understatement. I'm filled
why
with
do you
rage
keep voting for
and
these
a lot of
assholes
anger.
then?
As a family that lost 3 homes, I would welcome federal help.
The permit approval system.
Well, you shouldn't even have to get it.
To the point of it stops.
President Trump yesterday now allowing California wildfire survivors to bypass local permitting delays. Builders who've waited more than 60 days for that permitting can now begin reconstruction without waiting for local approvals.
Yeah, and it's unbelievably ridiculous that it took them this long. No surprise to anybody. This is how Democrats function. They function by not functioning at all. And once they get the permitting, it's fucking paperwork, dude. It's paperwork. Just sign off on the paperwork, and then they can get to building. And then I guess, after they get all the permitting done, then they'll probably have to fight with their insurance companies to try to get the funding to get their houses rebuilt, which I hear that's kind of a nightmare in and of itself, because a lot of the insurance companies, they claim they don't have enough money to pay for it, which I'm sure people in California, they've been paying very high amounts of homeowner insurance premiums for years and years and years and never had to cash out on it. I mean, when was the last time there was a major earthquake in California? Was that the one like in the early 90s? And yeah, of course, there's wildfires here and there, but nothing on this level of devastating. All right, so Governor Gavin Newsom, he says, I'm proud to announce the completion of California HSRA, California High-Speed Rail's Southern Railhead facility in Kern County, a significant step forward in building the nation's first high-speed rail system, which, by the way, they still haven't laid one single track yet. We're laying the foundation for a transportation future that's cleaner, faster, and more connected. And let's see. So, Grok, as of today, what is the minimum cost requirement to finish the high-speed rail project in California? Also, what are the odds that this high-speed rail project will ever be finished? I don't know how it's going to answer it. I haven't looked. So, as of February 2026, estimates for remaining cost to complete California's full high-speed rail from San Francisco to LA are between $113 to $120 billion, based on total projections of $128 to $135 billion, with about $15 billion spent so far. And the sources: CHSRA reports, LA Times, Wikipedia. The odds of full completion are uncertain. Progress on Central Valley segments continues with state funding, but depends on federal and private support amid cost and timeline issues. I would give it very close to a 0% chance that this thing fully gets funded. And I've talked about this before. I've even looked up this statistic before, that if you took the 120,000 miles of rail that exists all across the country today, which back in the turn of the 20th century, there was actually a lot more. There was like 160-something thousand miles of rail. But as of today, there's about 120,000 miles of rail. Even if you adjust for today's inflation, the cost to build, the estimated cost to build all of the rail across the entire country, all 120,000 miles, would cost roughly $250 billion to do. And California wants to spend roughly half of that amount on about 400 miles of track. And that's about it. I think it's roughly that. It's like 400, maybe 600 miles worth of track, because it branches off to go to a couple of spots. But the main artery of this track is to go from LA to San Francisco. I think it like stops through like Fresno or something like that. Absolutely insane, ridiculous. California is absolutely incompetent when it comes to money. They're corrupt, they're incompetent, they're brain dead. It just absolutely unbelievable. I mean, I can't believe that anybody's even entertaining this idea at this point, that 120, I mean, even if you took the low number, $113 billion. So if you take that number, let's see how many adults there are. There's roughly 40 million adults that live in California. First, I asked it how many taxpayers are in California, and the answer said that, well, virtually everybody pays some form of taxes. So I was like, all right, fine. How many adults are in California? There's about 40 million. So if you take 113 billion divided by 40 million people, that's almost $3,000 per adult in California. That's how much that they're going to have to take from every adult in California in order to see this high-speed rail to fruition, to completion. And that's on the low end. That's the $113 billion number, not the $135 billion number, which, do you think that even if they were to get $135 billion in funding, do you think they're going to go over budget? Duh. Of course they're going to go over budget. They always go over budget. I mean, if they realistically finish this entire thing, it probably cost $250 billion over freaking 600 miles of track. These people are out of their freaking ever-loving minds. All right, moving on. Let's go back one more. What else do we got? Senator Cory Booker. Later today, there's an antitrust hearing on the proposed Netflix and Warner Brothers merger. We need answers on this. We need answers on how this will affect workers, artists, and not add to consumers already facing rising costs. What? Consumers facing rising costs? Well, how about you just find something else to entertain yourself with? You can just, I don't know, just sit on YouTube all day. You don't have to freaking watch Netflix all the time. Just cancel your Netflix. If enough people cancel their Netflix and they quit watching Warner Brothers films, guess what they would have to do? They'd have to lower their prices now, wouldn't they? That's what I would assume they would have to do.
We're going to hold a hearing on Netflix's proposed acquisition of Warner Brothers. This is
supposedly it's the largest acquisition ever, I think, for entertainment.
In the history of the entertainment industry.
Yeah, there you go.
And the stakes are very high. It could affect what you pay for streaming services and movie tickets, and what choices you actually have as a consumer.
Well, just
it could
don't
also
pay.
Affect the workers.
Find something else to do with your free
we all
time.
Enjoy. Remember, as entertainment companies grow larger and more powerful, artists.
Yeah, Hollywood's not nearly as relevant as they used to be.
Now, there is
not exactly swimming in money. I mean, Netflix, to be fair, they are.
Of an acquisition like this, and the president is not a part of it. Donald Trump has
they always got to give a jab to President Trump with their Trump derangement syndrome.
Of this deal.
You can't just stick on topic, can you, dude? You always got to veer the conversation straight to Trump.
Involved. That should alarm everyone. We must enforce our antitrust laws to protect
They just can't help
consumers
themselves.
and markets.
What are they going to do? They're going to
small
miss Trump so
businesses,
much.
and all the stakeholders.
They're going to desperately miss Trump.
That's what I'm going to be fighting for in this hearing. It'll be in the Senate's Antitrust Subcommittee, on which I serve as the top Democrat, and I hope you will continue to follow along.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Democrats just found a way to just force Trump against his will into a third presidential term so they can just rail against him, call him a dictator for another 4 years, because I honestly don't know what the hell they're going to do once Trump is gone. They're just going to refer to everybody as Trumpian. We're going to hear the word Trumpian for the next 100 freaking years from Democrats, at least if they end up seizing power again. All right, CSIS happening now. Governor or U.S. Commerce Department Secretary Howard Lutnick joins for a keynote address at the CSIS Mineral Government Industry Dialogue on securing critical minerals supply. So I'll spare you the time of watching this. This would probably be excruciatingly boring for most people. However, they are talking about rare earth minerals. I brought that up on the Swamp repeatedly because it's very important for our country. And with Howard Lutnick, with Commerce, he's giving a keynote speech on it. So I figured I would at least bring this up, and I'll end up including that down in the description if you want to have a look at that. It's right here on YouTube. So it's just a simple click and you can start watching it. All right, Caroline Levitt, PepsiCo to slash prices up to 15% on Doritos, Cheetos, and other snacks. I wonder if this has to do with the couple of dozen. Oh, I'm going to get paywalled. That's right. I wonder if that has to do with a couple of dozen states that have removed all junk food from SNAP benefit eligibility. I wonder if it's just because simply a lot fewer people are buying their products now. Which, have you checked Dorito prices lately? It's like $7 for the small bag. At least where I live, they are. And I don't ever eat Doritos or Cheetos. I don't eat any chips or any of that kind of junk food. But I do check out the prices every now and then. And just the fact that 2 liters of Mountain Dew are like over $3 now, that blew me away because I haven't bought soda in forever either. And it's just absolutely mind-boggling. Last time I bought a 2 liter, it was probably like $1.20 maybe. If you buy 2, you get the third one free. It was like back during those days, if you remember that, like back in the pre-COVID era. All right, Rapid Response 47, Trump effect. Siemens Energy to spend $1 billion to boost manufacturing of electrical grid equipment. $1 billion in U.S. manufacturing, 1,500 new jobs. And they got the Wall Street Journal a freaking again, man. See, it really frustrates me because I want to bring this up because it's getting attention and it's relevant to the ongoing affairs of the quote-unquote swamp of D.C., our federal government, but they link an article that I can't freaking read, that nobody can read unless you pay them. It makes me wonder, does the Wall Street Journal, do they have like some secret contract with the federal government that elected officials have to link the Wall Street Journal like X amount of times per day? Because I see them quite a lot with these federal government accounts. U.S. Trade Representative, America's manufacturing sector is entering an expansion period. ISM manufacturing indexes up. Private industry average hourly earnings are up. Blue-collar wages are up, and manufacturing productivity is up. We got another one from Jameson Greer.
We've seen announcements. We've seen groundbreakings. We've attended some of those. We see concrete being poured and superstructures going up on the factories. If you look at the job numbers, you have construction starts, you have factory starts. Some of that's for AI data centers, but some of it's for factories too. We just had this morning, Siemens announced another $1 billion investment to produce products and equipment for the energy grid. As you mentioned, we had the manufacturer index just went up, and not only went up, but beat expectations. We've entered into expansion territory looking at that. We've seen wages going up for manufacturing jobs, $1,300 on private weekly earnings average over the past year. So we're seeing all the signals of the manufacturing boom. We're seeing the starts, we're seeing the index going up, we're seeing the wages going up, and we expect that as the benefits of the tax bill go into place, we'll see it even more.
Well, the money's certainly there. $19 trillion in total has been invested into the U.S. The AI infrastructure is blowing up. The electrical infrastructure is about to get a major upgrade over the next few years. So, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to get a lot of blue-collar jobs in the coming few years, which is definitely something a lot of Americans can benefit from. And quick comment on the Wall Street Journal. I will subscribe to them if, let's say, this channel starts to produce a little bit of change, just enough for me to get a subscription for Wall Street Journal, because I don't make a lot of money. I'm on the lower end of middle class for sure. But if the channel ends up producing anything in the future, anything with like AdSense or partner program or whatever it might be, hopefully, if I'm lucky enough, then I'll take that and put it directly to subscribing to these mainstream media boneheads, so I can actually click on these articles and not get nailed with a freaking paywall. If I had more time, if I wasn't hitting almost 2 hours already, I could just Google just the title and find a workaround, because there's usually other outlets out there that are talking about the same thing. But for tonight, I'm just getting a little too close to my time. I'm trying to keep the swamp under 2 hours. So anyway, Governor Andy Beshear says a new weather system is moving across the state today, bringing the possibility of rain and light accumulations of snow into the evening. Please stay alert. Check roadways at snowy. Oh, okay. So this is in Kentucky before traveling, and go slow. And NWS Louisville from 15 hours ago. Range of possibilities for today's snowfall from low end to high end. So I'm assuming Kentucky's not the only state that's getting more snow. I'm sure it's probably going to be over a decent swath of the eastern half of the U.S. We're going to get hit with another cold front in a couple of days, and I'm in the Tampa Bay area, so we're going to get, I think tomorrow we're supposed to be up to almost 70 degrees, which is still below our normal average. And then like a day or two later, it's supposed to be windy and back down into low 50s, which I can't complain about, because I think most people would welcome temperatures in the 50s in the early part of February. But anyway, so if you happen to live in Kentucky, I'm sure you already know that, but I did come across that. It's from a government profile, even though it's specific to Kentucky. And we'll head on to, from yours truly, this is my car from this morning, Frost 2026. I got frost on my car this morning, and I wrote the year a couple times, and scraped a bunch of frost up on the top of the car. This is the first time that I've scraped frost on my car since 2010. It was quite a long time ago. I got a video. I don't know.
Check it out, man. We got frost.
Scraping the car. This is about like 7 o'clock in the morning.
We've had frost, or we do have frost.
Yeah,
out here
frost.
playing with it.
A lot of frost.
Frost in St. Pete, in Florida.
All right, well, I think you get the idea. I'm just scraping a bunch of frost off my car. That was fun. All right, NASA, 20 hours ago, NASA completed a wet dress rehearsal for the Artemis II mission in the early morning hours on February 3rd to allow teams to review data and conduct a second wet dress rehearsal. NASA will now target March as the earliest possible launch opportunity for the Artemis II mission. I'm kind of bummed out about that, because I sooner rather than later, I want them to launch so I can follow it every day. I'll probably give like a quick 2-minute update each day on the swamp. I'm not going to dedicate a whole lot of time to it, because I understand there's not a whole lot of astronomy junkies out there, a lot of people who are all about NASA. So I get that. Most people are probably just not interested in it. It's like, okay, fine. There's 4 astronauts going around the moon. Big whoop. They're not even landing on the moon, for crying out loud. So I might just track it every day for a minute or two. But I'm just excited, just on my own personal time. I want to follow it as it progresses, because back when they were going to the moon, I wasn't alive yet. And I think the last time they went to the moon was like, 1973 or something like that. Okay, so we've got this link, nasa.gov. NASA conducts Artemis II fuel test, eyes March for launch opportunity. Don't have to go into detail with that. Just the point of it is that they've got a new earliest opportunity, which they're going to point to March as their earliest launch date. But we do have this, the full moon from last weekend. I think this was on Friday, maybe Saturday. Which is, of course, fitting, because this rocket is going to take the astronauts to the moon. Very neat moon setting. Engineers conduct a first run at terminal countdown operations during the test. However, the countdown stopped at 5 minutes left due to a spike in the liquid hydrogen leak rate. Crew safety remains the highest priority. So they're still working out the kinks, which I'm guessing that's the reason why they're not launching on February 6th like they were hoping to originally launch on. And from NASA Mars, Curiosity has been working the night shift on Mars. Using the LED lights on the end of its robotic arm, it created this rare nighttime view. It shows a small hole that the robotic geologist bored into the bedrock, revealing layers inside. Drill into the details. They've got a link where you can check that out, see whatever it could find. Actually, they might actually have close-ups on that. Maybe they do. Yeah, it did. You can see little rings in the bedrock. It's kind of cool, man, that a remote machine, they're just sending commands from Earth up to the rover to conduct these analyzing the sediment and just essentially just like the main point of the mission is just to try to find life, or at least signs that life was on Mars at some point. So that's very cool. Drilling into the bedrock of Mars, man. That's awesome. All right, and I'm going to finish up with this one with NASA. Future missions will reach farther, stay longer, and take on more ambitious goals. NASA is partnering with the Department of Energy to develop nuclear surface power and propulsion to support that future and help propel a new golden age of exploration. This is from the Office of Nuclear Energy in the U.S. Department of Energy. Nuclear in outer space. Energy is working with NASA to develop new technologies like space reactors to provide reliable power on the moon, Mars, and beyond. And that, I mean, they're doing this for real. They're building a moon base that's supposed to be fully functional by the early 2030s. And it's going to, the only way that they're going to be able to provide an ample amount of power and heat is by installing a nuclear reactor. And I'm assuming it's going to be similar to like what they use on aircraft carriers and in our submarines. Maybe it's similar to that. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe this is all brand new technology, but they do link this video. So let's take a look at this. Oh, very quiet. Plutonium-238. Even Voyager. Saturn. It's a cool image. There you have it. So what do you think? Do you think that video was AI? The astronaut looked a little AI-y to me. So that's always cool to look at, to see what they're doing with getting energy, or how they're going to use energy when they set up the moon base and when they head out to Mars and carry on getting humans as far into space as we could possibly get them to. So anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I'll be dropping a new show tomorrow evening as I cover the swamp Monday through Friday and everyone in it, the politicians, the bureaucrats, and the agencies. And also I'm posting daily on X, so feel free to comment there too if you'd like. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your night. May God bless America.